Sit back. We're about to start episode 5, Texting While Unresponsive, where we're focusing on where Joe has been MIA during the critical moments when Ashlee is hurt. But then he goes missing again during the time she's found and taken to the hospital. But where is Joe, and where is the engagement ring? Does he have access to the room while she's gone? When does he arrive at the hotel? He admits to having access to her cell phone and her password. Is it possible that he's texting from both phones? We are still examining the most intensely debated aspect of the Ashlee Jenae Robinson case, that critical 2-hour window where she appears to be texting while unresponsive. We reconstruct the final nights of her life at the Zuri Luxury Hotel in Zanzibar, using Joe's official interview with TMZ, local reports, and Instagram data. We piece together the events of April 8th, 2026. We break down the reported argument and the decision to separate into separate hotel rooms, and the haunting final one-word text message Ashlee sent before the tragedy. But did she really send it? We pick up examining what's happening right after they find Ashlee's body. April 9th. Deputy Director Chimbrera says Ashlee passes away at 3 p.m., PIC 38. The investigation confirms without any doubt that the act by the deceased, which she carried out on the 8th of April 2026 of attempting to hang herself at the Zuri Hotel, was what led to or caused her death on April 9th, 2026 at around 3 p.m. at the Ampoyo or Global Hospital. Therefore, based on the evidence collected regarding that incident, there is no person who can be linked in any way whatsoever to the death of the deceased. The evidence confirms that the deceased died as a result of her suicide attempt, which occurred on April 8, 2026. Interesting choice of words, of attempting to hang herself. So if she wasn't attempting to hang herself and was hung and or had another medical emergency that resulted in her not being okay, like overdosing from partying, from taking volumes and drinking alcohol, would that be a crime? Because in Tanzania, Zanzibar, suicide is classified as a crime that you can actually go to jail for. So was there a subpoena of evidence? Or was it just a review of what was on site and what was provided by Joe? Did Joe have access to her room and belongings after she was taken to the hospital? Many viewers have questioned the location of the engagement ring. Besides Joe's assertion that she wanted to call off the engagement, there is no other evidence to show that Ashlee ever wanted to take the ring off or call off the engagement. If Joe or anyone else had access to room 25 after Ashlee was taken to the hospital, do they have access to her electronic devices as well? But this also lends to the question, whoever had access to these devices would also need to be close enough to have access to passwords, and there's only one person that admitted to having her password, and that was Joe. Can this explain how she was able to text after being rushed to the hospital after 8:55 p.m.? April 9th, 2026 at 8 a.m., Joe calls Yolanda to inform her that Ashlee was, quote, taken to the hospital about 11 hours prior. She hurt herself, but is in stable condition, end of quote, as reported by Yolanda. This fits into the timeline as Ashlee is reportedly found at about 8:55 p.m. So 9 p.m. to 9 a.m., of course, is 12 hours. So at 8 a.m., that's 11 hours later. And that's when Yolanda gets the call from Joe informing that she had gone to the hospital. Yolanda receives no more text messages or call from Joe from this point. She does get another message. It's reported that Joe tried to reach out to her, I believe, around the time of the funeral, which it was reportedly left on read. But wouldn't you have done the same thing if he was acting shady when she was hurt? There's no point in me trying to be buddy-buddy with you after the fact when you should have been stepping in and helping to provide more information, as opposed to setting up Google Docs and sending emails. A phone call, FaceTime, WhatsApp would have been way more sufficient and expected way to communicate with someone. April 9th, 2026, 3 p.m. Ashlee is pronounced dead. Joe does not reach out to Yolanda to tell her of Ashlee's death. Instead, the hotel finds her emergency contact information in her passport and calls her parents to inform her of their death. After Ashlee is pronounced dead, people on social media point out that there appears to be no celebration of the proposal or post online on Joe's social media. In fact, it looks like he's actually appears to delete Ashlee's presence from his social media. But just 2 days prior, Joe only posted on X about AI. Nothing to celebrate the engagement. I did go over to X and do screenshots of what he was posting for that day. I'm not going to go over it because it's completely irrelevant to the story, but you're with your girlfriend on your proposal, her birthday, a whirlwind trip, and you're posting nonsense on X. We're not going to go on that. Anyway, so April 10th, 2026, Joe speaks to Ashlee's father, Harry Robinson, about getting her remains home, but never receives a call from Joe from this point forward. And Harry and Yolanda end up working with Zanzibar police to set up a GoFundMe to get Ashlee's remains home. April 10th, Joe says he could have gone home, but instead, quote, "The day after Ashlee passed, I had no time to grieve as I immediately began cooperating with the authorities in their investigation. I emphasize," he says, "I could have flown home on my own volition on April 10th, but I skipped the flight to stay back and ensure that Ashlee got home first." He continues, "The legacy media and social media trolls began to run with a patently false narrative of suspicion, which exacerbated the tragic situation. I began to receive a barrage of racially fueled death threats. I still do today. Moreover, my family's safety was at risk, as well as the safety of family members, friends, and employees. It's been incredibly painful to lose Ashlee. The hate, vitriol, and lies told by so many in service of the lie that I somehow had anything to do with her death have made the grief that much more difficult to comprehend." Keep in mind now, y'all, his passport was seized. Not that he voluntarily decided to stay behind. It may not have been seized immediately. It was seized about 48, 72 hours later, but it nonetheless was seized. So technically, yes, he could have left, and it would have looked even worse. Like, come on now. Anyway, April 13th, 2026, on Instagram page, Joe states, "On April 13, I started the day at the Malindi police station in Zanzibar because I was required to attend Ashlee's autopsy, a horrifying thing to hear just days after Ashlee passed. We eventually moved to the LUMU-MBA government hospital where Ashlee was being held in a mortuary. After several hours, our belongings arrived. I was asked to identify my belongings. All of the bags were mine, but Ashlee used them when we traveled. I bought them. I own them." I think the emphasis on buying the bags and owning the bags is to highlight that the bags actually did go back to the Robinson family. So he sounds like he's upset that his property, and rightfully so, was returned to the wrong people. And when we had talked about Ashlee's items going missing, that's not what we were referring to. At least I wasn't referring to it. So I wanted to make that known now. I'm going to actually talk about that here in a few minutes, but I didn't want you to think that it was skipped over. But what's also interesting is he makes it a point to make sure that Ashlee's belongings do get to the funeral home in Corona. So how were those belongings going to get there if they weren't shipped in the luggage that they came in? So maybe he was expecting to have behaved the way that he behaved, which is, as looking from the outside, we see that he could have behaved differently. His behavior does not look like someone who is grieving or trying to help. It looks like one who is being interrogated and trying to cover tracks and not talking to the family. Like, that just is crazy. So Why make it a point to show us the letter, the response letter from the embassy on the belongings, showing that the items did go to her? You stated on Instagram, Joe did, that he never got his belongings back. So we don't know if he's referring to the bags that the Robinson family has. Well, he would have to be, because if he was making it seem like he never got his bags back from the U.S. Embassy, the letter states clearly, and I'll go into that a little later, that he got those bags back. So just, again, trying to clarify some things, because research was done and points are being made and they're not being answered. There's fluff coming at us that don't apply to the questions that we're asking, like, where the hell is the engagement ring? Are you insinuating that the Robinsons have it? He continues, I was instructed to go through all the bags. I was so traumatized when opening the bags and smelling Ashlee's perfume on her clothes, seeing her wigs, hats, etc. But I collapsed on the ground. I could only get through the bags that contained my clothes and sign for them, my hand trembling the entire time. When I started to see another intentionally false claim surface in the media, I began to determine what happened to the rest of the property. I contacted the U.S. Embassy and submitted documentation, photograph, purchase records, and formal receipts so she can clarify regarding where the remaining items have been sent. The response I received from the U.S. Embassy stated that Corona Funeral Homes had confirmed they received the personal belongings from the police and subsequently sent them to Ashlee's legal next of kin after her remains were repatriated. The embassy further stated that the 2 items marked with the green dots in the photographs were returned to me, and that the remaining items were included in the shipment to the family. So I emphasize that statement directly contradicts the public reporting that the belongings were missing or that nobody knew where they are. This post is not about speculation. It's about documenting the timeline and sharing the records that were provided to me. I still don't have my belongings. So it would clearly mean that he's having to be talking about the belongings that he had returned to the Robinson family, which I'm not sure they would automatically know that they're Joe's. They probably would have assumed that they're Ashlee's. Like, no one's talking to one another, so this stuff could be easily worked out if people were communicating. Amazing how that goes, but nonetheless, as I stated, when I did my first 3 episodes and all my posts online, I never questioned if the belongings were missing. I questioned if he had access to them while Ashlee was rushed to the hospital, and when Joe was unaccounted for from about 8:30 to about 10:17 p.m. And then he resurfaced in time to check into his room and get text messages from both Ashlee and Yolanda. So I'm just very confused about that, because again, Ashlee had already been rushed to the hospital as well, so she can't be text messaging if she's unresponsive. So in addition to all of her designer items back at the Portland home, did you retain possession of those? Does she not have any items there? When he had access to the luggage, was Joe allowed to remove anything? Nowhere in the timeline does it say that Joe went with her to the hospital initially. Is that information missing? Clearly it is. I mean, we don't have it. We don't have when he arrived at the hospital. We don't have when he finds out that she's been found unresponsive either. And still at no point is it disclosed where the engagement ring is. TMZ reported that the family said they didn't get it back with her remains and her belongings. So are we saying that the shady police or the coroner and all them people either took it or you took it? I mean, birds of a feather is all I'm going to say. Allegedly. So we have no proof but what is stated by Joe, that she wanted to call off the engagement, and so that ring mysteriously not being on her finger is very suspicious. It's very convenient. And why doesn't Joe make any contributions to the GoFundMe? I mean, he's got Platinum American Express cards and Visas. He's paying with all these different credit cards, which I don't know if you guys caught that. he shows the platinum card for the medevac lift, but he ends up paying with the Visa. American Express and Visa are two different credit cards. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are inconsistent, with inconsistent behavior, inconsistencies in his timelines. You know, it makes me wonder, and if this was the shoe were reversed, and he being the African American man and she being the white woman, this case would still be in the headlines, and they would be going through all of the details of the case with a fine-tooth comb. So if they're not going to do it, we're going to do it. And then I have another fun fact. It's going to blow your socks off. So who can attend autopsies in Zanzibar? So in Zanzibar, as in Tanzania, only certain individuals are legally permitted to attend an autopsy. The process is governed by an Inquest Act and related criminal procedures rule, which defines who can be present during a medical examination of a deceased person. But he said he was legally, he was required to attend? So how many lies and inconsistencies are we going to find?
Every time I see a crypto guy where they dropped an investigation, I said, you're lucky I'm president.